All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to ACT Online Prep Live, powered by Kaplan. My name is Steve, and I will be your teacher for the next hour or so of ACT Online Prep goodness. We're going to show you a little bit around our really cool online class and just give you a taste of the sort of things we're offering here to help you prepare for the ACT. And backing me up tonight on this journey, I have my amazing off-screen teachers who will be helping you out. Please ask them as many questions as you want during today's session. They're right over there in the chat at any time, and their names are Greg, Katie, Laura, and Rob. They are fantastic, so you'll definitely want to ask them your questions, and sometimes I might be asking y'all questions as well. I want you interacting. I want you chatting with us. I want you getting involved in the lesson, because that is how you learn more during the online classes and how you get more out of this whole experience. Now, if at any point you have any sort of technical issues or tech difficulties, you can always just hit refresh on your browser, and that generally fixes stuff up if you're having any issues. But if you still have issues after doing that, just let us know over there in the chat and we can help you out. The other thing that we have over on the side of your screen there is a poll. So we're going to be doing questions today. We're actually going to be putting questions up on the screen, working through them together. If at any point you think you know the answer and you want to let us know that you think you know the answer, well, you can vote in that poll at any time. And sometimes I might talk about, okay, this many of us think it's answer choice A, and this many of us think it's answer choice C, or something like that. And so definitely try and get involved is the main lesson. But let's dive in and let's see what we're going to cover today. What things we are going to talk about here in class. We're going to show you a little bit of everything. So all 5 sections of the ACT, just so you can get a little taste of what class is like for each of these sections. And of course, in our full class, we cover all of these sections in depth, give you all the review that you need to score really, really highly on this test. So you can see we have all of our main sections right here that we're going to talk about. At the end, we'll talk a little bit about the course in general, what sort of things we offer, how it can be helpful to you to help you prepare for your ACT. And I know we have an ACT test date coming up really soon, coming up in a little over a month. So this is something definitely you'll want to stick around for here at the very end. But let's look at the test and what is included here on the test. Y'all might be familiar with this, but there are these 5 sections. We're going to cover each of these in order today. And the first one we're going to talk about here is the English section, which tests us on, well, we'll see that in a second. It tests us on things like grammar, things like usage, things like style. These are things that we get tested on in the English section. But the one thing to really notice about the English section is how many questions we have to do. Which you see right there, 75 questions over 5 passages, and we have just 45 minutes in which to do this. So we really got to watch our time when we're doing this. And that's why it's important to prep. It's important to know what's coming, because the more you know what they're going to ask you about, the more you have that on automatic pilot for test day, the easier it will be to breeze through these questions. I know that can look a little intimidating sometimes, all of the questions that you have to do in that amount of time, but you'll see that they do just the same patterns over and over and over and over and over again. So if you can just memorize a lot of these patterns, you'll be able to just blast through these questions very quickly, very confidently on the test. So let's look at what exactly we're being tested on in the English. So one thing to note is that the passages that you're going to get, remember we said you're going to get 5 passages. And they will be on a variety of styles, topics. Some will be literary, some will be more technical, some will be more academic, but that doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about the style of the writing there. We're going to treat them all the same way, and we're going to use the same strategies for each one. So that's really nice. That's really good. Now, one thing that you'll notice a lot as well is depending on what they're asking us, we might not even have to read the whole passage. A lot of times for things like grammar rules or usage rules or idioms, we'll have those so memorized by the test that it won't really matter what the rest of the passage says. You could just read that question by itself and answer that question. Now, that's not going to be true of all questions, though. There are going to be some questions where we have to read the whole passage or the whole paragraph. Sometimes they take like sentences and they want us to rearrange the order of the sentences, and we talk about those a lot in class. But you just know that you don't have to read absolutely everything for this section, which is also really cool. So here are the three main categories that we're going to be tested on. Conventions of standard English. This just means grammar, basically. So we got to know all of that stuff, and we want to have it memorized. It's not too much, though. It's not overwhelming. There's just a few key things that you can memorize. Knowledge of language. We will be occasionally tested on meaning and vocabulary in these questions. And production of writing. So this is what I was talking about with order of the paragraphs or order of the sentences, making sure that we understand the logic of how the passage is put together. So let's just look at one very, very common thing that we're tested on. And it's something actually that people get confused about a lot. And that is... Oh, I'm giving you a question. I see that Kaora asks, should we skim over the passage? And it's a little bit more complicated than that, KRU. And sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. By the way, anybody, if I mispronounce anybody's name, please complain loudly to the all-screen teachers over in the chat so they can correct me. I have been known to butcher a few names at times. But KRU, to answer your question, there are going to be times when skimming is appropriate, but there's going to be times when it's not. And we'll point out those times. We'll talk about when it's okay just to kind of go to the next underlined portion, when you're going to want to read through, because it depends on the type of question. But a lot of times with questions involving commas, like we're going to do right now, skimming might be something you want to do. Skimming could be possible here because if it's a comma error, it's not really going to have anything to do with the rest of the passage or with what other sentences say. It's just going to be about that one sentence. So there are a few rules for commas. You might have learned these before, but you might have forgotten them. It's very important that you remember you don't just put a comma down wherever there's a pause. A lot of people are taught that. Like, just wherever you would pause naturally, you put a comma down. No, don't do that, because if you do that, you're going to be putting commas everywhere. You'd be like, use commas, pause, to separate, pause, elements in a series, pause, or mod. We don't want to do that. Well, if we do that, we're going to have commas all over the place. That won't look good. That won't be good. There are some specific rules, though, that we can memorize. One rule is when you have things in a list of 3 or more. So we're all kind of used to this example. My most interesting classes this year are physics, comma, calculus, comma, and US history. So when you have things in a list like so, you want to have a comma separating each one. So let's even taught the one in front of the and you don't need, but we're going to keep this one. I don't think they would test you on that, since that's somewhat debatable, but we're going to keep it in there just to be safe. Now, another place that we use commas is when we are connecting independent clauses. What does that mean? Independent clauses. So you might not remember what exactly that means. An independent clause is just a sentence that could stand on its own. A sentence that it might be combined with something else in a sentence, but if you just took that portion of the sentence, just set it there, you could read that, it would make sense. If you want to connect two independent clauses, like you don't want them to be separate sentences for some reason, you actually want to put them together because they're like related to each other or something like that, then we're going to have to use a comma and what we call a fanboys conjunction or a coordinating conjunction. In a separate lesson, we talk about these conjunctions. You might have heard the word fanboys before. It's just a little way of remembering the different conjunctions. And you can ask over there in the chat what those stand for. It's just for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so are the fanboys conjunctions. But don't worry about those right now. Just remember, if I have two independent clauses, notice I work on Mondays, sentence all by itself would be totally fine. Just to say I work on Mondays. It would also be totally fine just to say I have soccer practice on Tuesdays. That is also its own sentence, a complete sentence. If I want them to put them together, I have to use a comma and a fanboys conjunction, like you see right here. And they definitely test that on the test. So always notice if you have two independent clauses being connected. Okay, a couple more. We use commas whenever we are putting in a parenthetical non-essential phrase or clause. Another word that you'll hear a lot is non-restrictive. Non-restrictive phrase or clause, you want to separate it with commas. How do we know if something is non-restrictive? There's another really easy rule that you can just memorize here. So if you look at this sentence, you see this phrase, much to her delight. And you're wondering, should I put commas around that? Well, just take it out for a second. Just cover it up. I'm going to actually cover this up for a second. Like this. And then say, does the sentence still make sense? Does it still sound good if I take that part out? Azara found that the hours she spent studying were worth the effort. You know, that sounds totally fine. That sounds totally fine on its own. So that means this little extra phrase is non-restrictive, non-essential. So I can put it in there, but I just want to separate it with commas, like you see right there. So if you're ever not sure, maybe put your hand up to the screen, cover up that part of the sentence, and see if it makes sense without that part. If so, then you need the commas there. And okay, I know these are a lot of rules, but I just got one more for you. Just one more for you. Use a comma to offset an introductory or modifying phrase. So here we see after school, Mindy has to go straight to work. So this opening phrase right here, this opening adverbial phrase after school, we want to put a little comma before we put the subject Mindy. Alright, well, okay, so 4 main rules, but again, if we just memorize them, we can get a lot of points. Let's take a look at an example here on this question. And so you can see here, we're not going to read the whole passage. We're not going to read anything around this sentence. We are just going to read this sentence right here and get this question right. It says, our hometown newspaper's editor and resident visionary, Daniel Rivera, argues that a free press is now more important than ever. Daniel, how right you are. But when we're looking at this, we're probably going to think, this comma is a little suspect. And everybody tell me over in the chat, why? Why is this comma right here? Why would you be a little skeptical of that comma right there? You might be thinking, well, I do have an and here. But I don't have a whole nother sentence that goes on its own. And I don't have a list. This is not a list of 3 different things. You know, Daniel Rivera is not the hometown newspaper's editor, head of the PTA, and resident visionary. He's not 3 things. He's only these two things. So we can say this comma is wrong. We are going to get rid of this comma. And then we just want to look below. Say, well, okay. Which answer is going to have the comma in the right place? And you can put your vote into the poll. You can put your votes into the poll. I'm already seeing some votes in there. I'm seeing about 3/4 of us saying answer choice D is going to be the right answer, and that is absolutely correct. We have this opening phrase, our hometown newspaper's editor and resident visionary, and then who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about Daniel Riviera. So we'll put a little comma there that now applies to Daniel Riviera, and then we can go on with the rest of the sentence. And again, notice that we have a comma here, and we have a comma here. Great way to test whether that is correct is to go, well, would this work if we took Daniel Riviera out? Would it be okay? Would this sentence work if we took Daniel Riviera out? Our hometown newspaper's editor and resident visionary argues that a free press is now more important than ever. Yes, that works just fine. Of course, we'd have to take out this comma. That comma's got to go. But this works just fine without that noun phrase there, Daniel Riviera. So having a comma on each side is a good way to go. Answer choice D is correct. And for everybody who voted for that one, I'm going to give you all a little watcha ninja throwing star for getting answer choice D correct. Let's talk really quickly about another very, very common grammar issue that comes up on the test. You might be really familiar with this, and that is subject-verb agreement. Your basic building blocks of a sentence is a subject and a verb. As long as you have a subject and a verb, you have a sentence that counts as a complete sentence. It's very, very important, though, that your subject, your noun, match your verb in two different ways. One way it's got to match is in person. So how you're conjugating that verb, depending on whether your subject is I. Notice we conjugate the verb differently than if the subject is you, or if the subject is they or we. So you have to make sure that you have the right conjugation of your verb for the person, for the subject. You also have to make sure that your verb matches your subject in terms of singular or plural. So like how many of the person or thing that you have. And so, she works really hard, but they work really hard. She is singular, so she's got to take the singular verb. They is plural, so they have to take the plural verb. And you got to check both of those things anytime you see a verb underlined. So let's look at an example. And this one's a little tricky. This one's kind of interesting. And the reason it's kind of tricky is because it's long. And so this is something that you can just look for. You can just notice when they're doing this. They have this like really long portion of the sentence. It goes blah, 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 on and on and on. The verb doesn't show up till down here. Oh my goodness. So they're putting all this space in between the beginning of the sentence where the subject is and the actual verb. Well, everybody go back to that beginning of that sentence and tell me in the chat, what do you think is the subject of that verb? Have become increasingly difficult to discover. Like, give me the exact words earlier in the sentence that is the subject. What? I even hate saying it, but what have or has become increasingly difficult to discover? What are we trying to discover here in this sentence? Everybody tell me in the chat, what do you think? What are we trying to discover? You look back at all this stuff. Let me give you some hints while you're trying to figure that out. Again, take out non-essential stuff. For example, when you see these dashes, these dashes mean, well, this part is an interesting, nice little extra tidbit, but it's not really important. If it's there in dashes, I don't really care about it that much as far as what the subject is going to be. It's just like an added thought. It's just a little bonus. Okay? So I'm seeing people are voting. And I love that people are voting. But what is the subject? I am seeing fossil fuel deposits. That's right, because if we look at what we have left, this is just an opening phrase right there, and this is just what we call a prepositional phrase. If you see that word like of, you can say, well, I don't care about anything past of. So we have fossil fuel deposit. That is going to be singular. Have is plural. And so just by kind of blacking out those things, it looks like I've censored this or something. It looks like I've this is top secret information now that I've just blacked out here. But by doing that, we can find the subject really easily. We know that the sentence is wrong, as is, and we go down. We want the plural form, or choice C, which has a ton of people voting for it. I think that deserves another ninja throwing star. Watcha. That was a big one. Y'all got a big ninja throwing star right there. Okay, so let's move on. That gives you a taste of grammar. There's a lot more where that came from. Okay, there's a bunch of grammar rules, but remember there is a limited number. It's not infinite. It doesn't go on forever. So although there is a bunch of stuff to memorize, it's not that hard to memorize it all, and then you'll notice a ton of it on test day. But let's talk about math now. Math, the minutes per question is pretty easy, ironically, since this is the math section, but you can see we have 1 minute per question there on each of our math questions. Some questions might take a little bit more than that. Some questions might take a little bit less. Here is what we are tested on in the math. Again, this looks like a lot, right? Number and quantity, algebra, geometry, functions, statistics, probability. That's actually pretty fun. I actually like that part. That part's a lot of fun to teach. Integrating skills, modeling. So it looks like a lot, but again, don't be intimidated by this. We cover all of this content. And you've covered all of this content in your math classes in school too, but it might not be completely fresh. It might have been a little while since you've done some of it, and that's why it's great to have an online Kaplan review. For example, here is one thing that we've all done. At some point, you have all done FOIL, and you've learned what it means: first, outer, inner, last. But it's just important that if you haven't done it for a while, that you remember how to do it and that you're able to complete it. So doing FOIL here, of course, we would do our firsts, which, by the way, almost always are just x and x, right, to give you a positive x squared. Then you do your outers, and this is where you want to watch your signs now. We have positive x and negative 3, so that would give us negative 3x. Then you do your inners, just positive 2 and positive x, so that would just be positive 2x, multiplying those together. And then finally you do your outers. Again, watch your signs. Positive 2 times positive 3 would give us negative 6. And then once you're at this point, well, you just combine your like terms right here. In the center, you always have those like terms. And so we have negative 3x plus 2x would just give us negative x. You could also think of it as 2x minus 3x. So let me back that up, and it would look like this. Nice, easy peasy. Now the harder thing, though, that we have to do quite a bit is do this same process but in reverse. Back it up. And so we might have to do reverse FOIL. Also on the ACT, I mean, there might be times where you have to use that quadratic formula. I don't know if y'all remember that horrible thing, but a lot of us were taught like a song. I'm not going to sing the song. People are always trying to get me to sing the song, but I'm not going to do it. I refuse. But we cover that. We talk about the quadratic formula in class quite a bit, and you get used to it. But a lot of times you don't need it. And you really want to look at your quadratic. Don't just automatically use the quadratic formula. Look at it and think to yourself, well, could I just test out the possibilities here? And for example, here, if you're looking at it, all you need to say to yourself is, can I come up with two numbers that would multiply together to give me 6? Or either add or subtract together to give me 5. And they're not going to give you too many numbers here that could multiply to this final number. There's only going to be a couple pairs of numbers that you have to test out. And if you notice, two numbers that work. So for example, probably popping into your head right at this moment is 2 and 3. 2 and 3 multiply together to give you 6, add together to give you 5. So that's probably a good idea for our terms here, and you would just put them right on in there, and you would see that that would work. If you foiled this, you would get right back to this quadratic. Now you do want to be careful with this a little bit in terms of signs, because what if I change this? Let's have a little fun. Let's actually change this around a little bit, and let's keep this as plus 5x, but let's change this to minus 6. This is going to make things more interesting here. Of course it equals 0, because we always want it to equal 0. And now when we make our parentheses, well, we want to be a little bit more careful. It looks like the same situation. We still put our x's there. But when we're thinking of numbers that multiply together to give us 6, add or subtract to give us 5, well, we can think about 2 and 3. Again, the problem here, though, is this negative sign means those two numbers have to be the opposite sign from each other. It means one of these numbers is going to have to be positive, the other one is going to have to be negative. And so there's no way we could take like a positive 3 and a negative 2 and get to positive 5. Right? We can't do that. Or even if we reversed it, if we had positive 2 and negative 3. Again, we're still not going to be able to get to 5. So are there any other pairs we could be dealing with here? Yes, we could be talking about 6 and 1, which is another pair that would multiply together to give you 6. But notice you could subtract and get 5. So all we have to do is say, well, okay, which one do we want to have positive? Since there's a positive number right there, we want the positives to win. If we're going to have a positive in this position, we want the positives to come out on top. So we will make the bigger of the two numbers positive. We'll make the smaller of the two numbers negative. And shagaboom. There we go. And we got the answer. Yeah. So, Laura is asking, can you write down equations on the test? And absolutely, Laura. You know, the test will be on paper for you. You can write all over the place in that little test book that you get. You also get a calculator, but you're very limited into the types of calculators that you can bring in. You can't bring in one of those like fancy TI 89s that just do all of the math for you. You got to bring a very stripped down calculator. But I want to show you some examples now of some math, and you'll see where you don't really need a calculator for any of this stuff. For example, let's take a look at this right here. Here we are going to do the reverse FOIL. They ask, what is the sum of the two solutions for x in this quadratic equation? So we're going to do the reverse FOIL there on that, and I want y'all to tell me, well, what two numbers, and this is going to be very striking, it's going to be very easy to think up these two numbers. What two numbers would multiply to give you 56? This is a negative sign, so multiply to give you 56, but would subtract to give you 1. You can kind of think of there being a little 1 in front of that x. Whenever there's a variable by itself, you can just think of a little invisible 1 hanging out. So what two numbers could multiply to give you 56, but then just subtract to give you 1? Everybody tell me in the chat over there, and we will make our two parentheses while y'all are doing that. We're going to put our x's in, of course, for each one. That part's nice and easy. And I'm seeing some replies. I'm seeing 7 and 8. Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing, we can't put in any other things that are going to work out here that are going to do this. something like 28 and 2, is not going to do it. Something like, 14 and 4 or something is not going to do it. So we gotta go with 7 and 8. Let's go ahead and put those in there. And now don't worry about chats. Don't worry about signs right now. You're just thinking, okay, what are some possible numbers that multiply to 56? And hopefully 7 and 8 is like the first set that occurred to you. I would think that would be like the first one as opposed to like 4 and 14 or 2 and 28. I mean, those are a little more random. 7 and 8 should be the first things that occur to you, and if we subtract them, we will get 1. So all we have to think about is which one should be positive and which one should be negative. Again, notice this sign is positive, so we want the positive numbers to win. And that's all you need to remember. If this sign were negative, we'd want the negatives to win. But because this is positive, we want the positives to win. So we're going to put positive next to the bigger number, 8. We're going to put negative next to the smaller number, 7. That way, when we add those up, when we do the FOIL, we'll be doing positive 8x minus 7x. Would give us just good old 1x, positive 1x. But we're not done yet. What the heck is this asking for? Well, let's go ahead and now we set each of these equal to 0. Because 0 times anything equals 0. So if either of these parentheses ends up equaling 0, I would be a happy person. I would be thrilled. If x minus 7 equals 0, huzzah. Awesome. If x plus 8 equals 0, awesome. I'm super happy about that. Okay, so we solve for both of these, and this would be adding 7 to both sides, so we get x equals 7. This would be subtracting 8 from both sides, so we get x equals negative 8. Now we got to go back and go, okay, what are they asking for? Because notice these are both answer choices, and this is one of the scary things they do a lot on the test. You'll come up with numbers, you'll come up with answers, you'll see, oh my goodness, they're both there. But wait, let me hold on and look at what I'm asking for. What is the sum of the two solutions? So we want to add these up. And everybody tell me in the poll, what am I going to get if I take positive 7 plus negative 8? What am I going to end up with there in that case? What am I going to end up with if I get that? Well, remember, adding a negative is just like subtracting. Right? Adding a negative is just like subtracting, so we'll say 7 minus 8. And it looks like we are going to get a negative 1 for that one, which is answer choice C. So it is a sort of complicated problem, but this is all very mechanical. This is just something that you just memorize. You just learn how to do it. You get to the point where you can do it in your sleep, and then you are able to get to that answer really quickly on test day. All right. Let's talk about something else a little bit different, but a part of math that's also really important, and it is triangles. So a few things, again, you probably remember this. You probably learned all these goofy things about triangles, and it seems like a lot, but with a little bit of review, you can get them back into your memory. For example, interior angles always add up to 180. The area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. What other things about triangles? If you have a right triangle, you can remember the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Again, if it's been a while for you that you've dealt with these, don't worry. I mean, we'll talk about them. We'll cover them in class, and it'll just be a matter of doing a few problems, just getting it back into your brain. And especially with Pythagorean theorem, things like that, there are cool little shortcuts, like 3, 4, 5. And 5, 12, 13. I'm not going to explain what these are right now, but they are super awesome shortcuts that can save you a lot of time because you don't have to use the full Pythagorean theorem, which looks a little annoying right there. Huh? And so let's actually just take one of these And I see that Teresa's asking a really interesting question here, which is, that problem seemed like the problem we just did seemed like it took longer than a minute. And it did. It took us together longer than a minute. But that's because we talked about it. We discussed it. We talked about the strategy. We said, okay, what should we do here? And that's always going to take you longer. But also, if you've done a lot of these problems, that question we just did, not going to take very long. In fact, I want you all to guess. How long do you think that previous problem would have taken me to do? Now, it's a little cheating because I've seen it before. Clearly, I mean, I'm teaching it. I don't come in and teach my classes blind and just go, what am I teaching today? I don't know. Let's see. So I do prepare for my teaching. But let's say I never saw it. Let's say I never saw it before. How long do you think it would take me to do it? And while you all are typing that in, I am going to go to our next problem here. And this is going to be a cool one. It's going to be about this first rule. So if you just memorize this first rule, you just have it stone cold in memory right here, then you can crush a problem in record time. Let's look at this problem. We're going to do this in under a minute. We're going to do it in way under a minute. It says, what is the degree measure of the smallest interior angle of triangle DEF below? And so you can see we're just going to use this rule. We're going to say, hey, I know if I add up all these angles, that's got to add up to 180 degrees. Don't try and do this in your head. Definitely write it down, on your scratch paper. But this, we just take each of the angles, add them up, make it equal to 180. Looks a little hairy, but it's actually not that bad. Since these are all addition signs, we can just throw away those parentheses and just take those parentheses away. And then it's just a matter of combining our terms here. So we got x plus 2x plus 4x. Well, it's going to be, 3x plus 4x, 7x. And we're just then adding up 2 plus 15 plus 16. So that'd be 17 plus 16. And then be careful when you're doing that math, but that would give us 33 if we did that. And that's the sort of thing you can do in your calculator if you want. But notice here, the test is going to give us really nice numbers. So that you don't actually have to use the calculator that much. A lot of people lean on the calculator. They're really very serious about the calculator. But if we subtract 33 from 180, look at the amazing thing that happens here. That turns into 7x equals 147. Well, that's really nice, because if I'm going to divide both sides by 7, well, 7 goes into 14 twice, right? And 7 goes into itself once. So that it's like they picked out that number very specifically for us so that we can get x equals 21. Now, be careful. Because how many of y'all did anybody go, oh, I love choice A, and already vote for choice A? Did anybody do that? You might have been very, very tempted after doing a bunch of math like this to go 21. I got 21. It's an answer choice. Huzzah! But you got to be really careful and make sure you're answering the right question. They want to know what is the smallest angle of this triangle. So you got to take one more step and go, okay, which angle looks like it's going to be the smallest? It's going to be this guy right over here, the x plus 2. So we're going to have to pop on another 2 degrees. Onto that, we're going to have to say the answer here is going to be 21 plus 2. We're going to have to plug that 21 in for that x over there to get our real answer, and that is going to be Kapuvasu really yelling out there. Add 2. Very, very, very important about that, to add that 2, and that's right. We get the right answer here being 23. But let me see what you all said about that previous question. I'm seeing Forehead Goddess. That is an amazing name. Forehead God. I kind of want to see this person's forehead. forehead goddess said it would probably have taken 30 seconds. And that's exactly right. I mean, either of these two questions that we did, if you know the strategy, if you know the formula by heart, you'll be able to just whip it out and use it on that question, get it right in well under a minute. Which is good because there are going to be harder questions down the road, and you're going to need a little bit more time for those. Okay, but let's go on. Let's talk about a couple more things. The next thing I want to talk about is reading and how we deal with reading. So this is where we get passages. You can see on the screen they're telling us we're going to get 4 passages. And we have 35 minutes in which to do them. So that's going to be a little short, right? It's going to be less than 8 minutes, or just a little over 8 minutes per passage. Like 4 times 9 would get us to our 36. So it's going to almost be 9 minutes. We're going to be almost there. Not quite. So about like 8 minutes, 45 seconds. For each of these passages. So again, we gotta move. We gotta be moving along. Now, one thing I want to say about that, though, is never speed read on this section. It's not a good idea. Skimming, we can skim on the English a little bit because we can just go to the grammar questions right away. On the reading, though, context is very important. Keywords are very important. I always want you reading at your own pace. And don't worry, because I've done it myself to check it. You can definitely read all 4 passages at your own pace and finish this section in time. I've tested it by reading the passages out loud. Okay? And I've done it. I set the timer, read the passages out loud to myself, and did all the questions, and was able to do it in the amount of time given. So what happens a lot of times is that, and I can see Kyle's kind of asking about skimming. If you skim, Kyle, what's going to happen a lot is that you might feel like you're saving time on the reading part, but then when you get to the questions, you're less prepared to answer the questions, so the questions end up taking longer because you missed crucial parts of the passage or you didn't get a clear understanding of the passage. And so any time that you've saved on the reading part ends up taking you longer on the questions part. So it's not really worth it in the end. Right? And one thing, Jessica also asked a great question. Should I read the questions first? In some situations, we might tell you to do that. Generally, though, you're going to have about 10 questions per passage. So that's a lot of questions. It's going to be hard to read all the questions and to keep all those questions in mind as you're reading the passage. So you're going to find that that's not as helpful as you would like it to be. You would like to go like, oh, I can read all the questions first. I know it's coming. But because there's 10 of them, well, I don't know about y'all, but I can't keep 10 things in my head at one time and read a really long passage at the same time. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to read for 2 things as we're reading. We're going to read for one thing called the gist of the paragraph. And the way that I really like to explain this is that when you read a paragraph, I want you to be able to say in your head how you would explain that paragraph to your 5-year-old niece or nephew. Like, put it into that simple a terms. No matter how complicated, no matter how technical the paragraph is, think, how would I explain this to my 5-year-old nephew? That's all the complexity, all the detail that you need. Just a very simple gist that you could explain to a child is all that you really need as you're going through. Now, we might need more detail later when we get to a question. But when we're reading initially, I don't want you to drown in those details, because that could really start to overload your working memory. Instead, just go, okay, what's the gist? And the other thing that we're going to do is when we see details that we think are important, we're going to put like a little note, 1 or 2 word note off to the side. Right? So like, and you'll see this, I'll write it on the screen, but you can write these little brackets off to the side of a paragraph and say, okay, this paragraph was about neutrino positronetrons. Let's just say, like, this paragraph is about neutrino positronetrons. You're like, what the heck is that? I don't care. Maybe I won't even get a question about it. So I don't wanna get too bogged down. I'm just gonna write on the side neutrino, like that. And if I get a question about that later, well, I can come back to that part of the passage. So that's all we really need to do is as we go through each paragraph, state the gist, and then we'll make little 1 or 2 word notes if there's like a big detail that we want to come back to. So let's look at a portion of a passage here. I'm going to put the first paragraph on the screen. I'm going to want you all to read this paragraph for me. And we're going to talk about, okay, are there any like little 1 or 2 word details you want to put on the side? We're also going to talk about the gist of this paragraph. But as you're doing this, there is one question I want to ask you at the end when you're done to let me know that you're done the paragraph. I want you all to tell me this very opening phrase here, in the past. I want you to give me a guess what that means for the author's opinion here. What that might mean for the author's opinion, tell me in the chat. When you have it, everybody go ahead, read it at your own pace. So hopefully we're coming to the end here. I think you could have read that out loud in that amount of time. You don't have to rush. And I'm seeing some people with some great answers already. Emily says he doesn't agree. Laura says this discovery changed. Ooh, I like what Liquid Pen said. I always prefer the liquid gel pens myself as well. Liquid pen. This is an initial opinion. Yeah, in the past, the scientific consensus. This is another thing. Whenever there's like a consensus about something, well, probably the author is gonna go, well, I no longer agree with this. This was what we used to think. This is what the consensus used to be in the past. Well, this is maybe going to change. And we don't know that right now in this paragraph, but notice at the end, she goes, one may ask whether this separation is found similarly in all animals instead of just being in people. I would bet a lot of money that yes, it is going to be found in all animals, or at very least in the vertebrates. Okay, so that's all I need to know about the gist of this, is that, you know, right-handedness, or this separate hemisphere thing, is always happening in humans. I might, make a few things really jumped out at me here, like 90% of humans are right-handed. I have no idea. You left-handed people are very, very special. That is very nice. Maybe also, genetic. They might ask me about genetic later. That seems to be important, that it was genetic. I'm not even going to write that whole word, though. Notice how I want to save time. I don't want to spend a whole ton of time writing these big, long, complicated notes out on the side. I'm just going to put like this little gen here, and then I'll be able to go, okay, I can come back. I can find that later. Awesome. So let's go on to the next paragraph. And as we see from this, Let's just read the first sentence together. The evidence that left-brained, right-handed preference for everyday activities occurs in nearly all vertebrates is mounting and substantiates the notion of a genetic component to the differentiation of the brain hemisphere. So this is exactly what we predicted, exactly what we expected. And that's how you get better at this reading stuff. Like if you already know what's coming before it even happens, you're going to get a lot more of the questions right. So you don't just want to be passive, just going, oh, let me just read it. You should always be thinking, where is the writer going with this? What is the author trying to say? And then you can anticipate stuff and you can become faster. So everybody go ahead and read this. Again, read every word at your own pace and tell me if there are any things that jumped out at you that you might want to scribble over here in the side. Any little 1 or 2 word notes you might want to scribble. Do that for me now. All right, hopefully you're coming to the end of reading that paragraph. Again, you could have read that out loud in that amount of time. So just tell me, what are some like little 1 or 2 word that really jumped out at you at this paragraph that you might want to scribble on the side? Yeah, Peter's bringing out a really important thing, and that is extreme language. No animal has shown as extreme a preference. That is important when they say things like that. So I'm going to put a little bracket there and say no animal. I'm not going to, I don't want to write anything too long again. I just want to write a little note. That might even not make sense to somebody else. If somebody else came along and read this, they might be like, what is Steve saying right there? But as long as it makes sense to me, that's all that matters. And I don't want to write anything too long. So increasingly favored, I'm seeing Ellie said, that is awesome. Combination of factors. Wait, where was that? Helena said that. That is awesome. So that looked like that was right here. Yeah, so right around the same place. You can do that. Other I like what Lee's pointing out, especially with that but. Lee put that in all caps, but other factors must have been important, and so that's a really big crucial thing. We're talking about genetics, started it, but there are these other factors as well. And again, Lee, what I would do is I would just write something really short, just 2 words. I don't want to write anything too long. I don't want this to take too long, but we see we get these other factors. All right. Yeah, and Ethan, that's very good. It definitely contrasts the info with paragraph 1. One thing that's important, though, is we don't want to write things like contrast or positive, negative. The sort of opinion stuff, the author purpose and opinion stuff, that's stuff you just want to have in your head. You want to know. You want to notice it. But this stuff on the side is just for like weirdo details that you might get a question about that you want to be able to come back and find very quickly. So let's look at our questions, and you can see how this was helpful to do this. And again, we didn't speed read. We read at our own pace. We just pointed out the gist and got the big details. So now we can answer these questions. You almost always get this question. What is the main point of the passage? One thing I really like to do is, instead of trying to find the right answer here, which you might be able to look down these and just see what the right answer is, and if you do, go ahead and put it into the poll for me. But I want to do something a little bit different here. I want you all to tell me what words make the wrong answers wrong. Because all 3 wrong answers are going to have very specific words that are going to disqualify those answers, that are going to say, no, these answers are too extreme, too wild, too crazy. The author does not go that crazy in this passage, and just by finding those words, you can get rid of all of the wrong answers. So can anybody tell me? Can anybody give me specific words in each of those choices? I'm seeing a lot of us voting, and that's awesome. That's awesome. Keep voting, but give me some words. Look at these wrong answers. What are some words that make the wrong answers wrong? And don't be scared to throw something in the chat. You know, if it's wrong, if you're off, this is where we want to make mistakes, where we want to get better at things. Michael is pointing out, like, when did we talk about the ape family? When did that happen? I do not remember talking about the ape family at any point. That's right. So we can get rid of C right there. All. Yeah, and I mean that's also in the same choice right there, right? I mean, all members of the ape family should. So even if we did talk about the ape family, that all members show either right or left-handedness, that is pretty extreme. That might be a little scary. I'm seeing Alex saying account for little, if any, of the specialization in the brain. So we did say that genetic factors weren't everything, that there were other factors, but little, if any, suddenly makes that way more extreme. We weren't saying genetics is just a little. Genetics is still a lot of it. We just said that there were other things too, so little, if any, is really crazy. What is the crazy thing in choice A? Did anybody say it? I'm not sure if anybody said it. But studying handedness is crucial to understanding brain chemistry. Again, it is crucial. You know, that might be right if the author said something like that. If the author specifically said, we need this thing, we have to understand handedness to understand brain chemistry. The author never said that, and you want to be really careful about extreme language, like this thing is crucial, or we have to have this thing. And so, honestly, without even reading the passages, just by looking at these kind of classic things that make answer choices wrong, like all and little, if any, and crucial, I might really just guess choice B is the right answer. It is possible that I could get this question right without even reading the passage at all. That's pretty crazy, right? That's pretty wild. So these are the types of things that you can learn. It can make these questions much, much easier. Now, don't take that the wrong way, everybody. I'm not saying don't read the passage. Oh my goodness, I'm not saying that. You have to read the passage. Please read the passage. But I am saying that these added tips can increase your accuracy a lot. Let's look at another question. And this one's a little bit tougher. This one's a little bit more complicated, but I think, again, we can use these same clues to help make it easier. It says it can be inferred from the passage that no species has ever displayed. No species has ever displayed. And then we got to pick one of these. Well, the thing that's hard about this type of question, this is called an inference question. It has this word inferred in it. What that means is whichever one of these is the right answer is not something explicitly said in the passage. And a lot of people make this mistake. They look at this and they go, well, which one of these, like matches something that I read in the passage? And they might think, well, like, I don't know, I read A in the passage, I think, so I'll pick A, or something like that. And you want to be careful, because in inference, this is not something said in the passage. Not something said in the passage, but that you know for sure is true. And that you know for sure is going to be true. So let's think about where we had some extreme language in the passage. Where do we have extreme language that we talk about no species ever doing something? And I think we even made like a little map about it, right? we said no animal has shown as extreme a preference as humans for right-handed or left-handedness. No animal has been as extreme in the preference. And now notice what the passage is doing. This question is actually going to make you take that part. We know that no animal has ever shown the same extreme preference as humans. And then we got to go back, well, what was humans' preference for right-handedness? And oh yeah, we marked that too, 90%. So no animal has ever shown as much right-handedness as humans. No animal is right-handed quite as much as 90%. Okay, maybe an animal has been like 80%, maybe some species, 3/4 of them are right-handed, but nobody's right-handed as often as humans. Nobody hits that 90% number. So going back to this question, we can see which one has not ever been displayed. Put your vote based on what we just saw back in the passages. Put your vote into the poll. Which one is impossible? Which one of these cannot happen ever, ever, ever in another animal species? And I had some people before voting for C, it looked like, but that's not the one that can never ever happen. Remember that humans are 90% right-handed, and no animal can get that high. No animal can ever get as high as humans, meaning no animal can ever get as high as 90%. So which one is impossible? Which one up here on these choices can never happen? Well, it's going to have to be B. Can never happen. They can't get to 95% because no animal can even get to 90%. No animal can get as high as we get. So that is an example of like a really high level question. Most people taking this test are going to get that question wrong because it makes you find the extreme thing. And then it makes you go back to another part of the passage and find that 90% number. So you got to do like 2 separate things to get that right. But you can anticipate that, knowing that it's an inference question, knowing that there's extreme language in there. Knowing those little tricks can really help get a hard question like this right on test day. And then your score is going to be amazing. If you're getting questions like this right, your score is going to be just fantastic. Okay, I want to talk about one more section. We're not going to get into the writing section. We're not going to get into the essay section today, but we do talk about it in our classes, so we'll discuss it. But that one isn't a multiple choice, right? So we're not going to get into it right now. We do have strategies for dealing with that section. Always comes at the end. Like when you're exhausted and you just want to go home and you don't want to do it anymore, then you got to write this essay. But we tell you how to get through it really easily. But let's talk about science, because science scares people sometimes. It might be the section you're worried about the most, because a lot of the questions look really wackadoo and look really nutty and might throw out a lot of words that you've never heard before. And the thing that you want to remember here about the science section is that you don't need to know any actual science. That's the crazy thing about it. It's not really a science test where you have to like know things about science. Like you don't need to know force equals mass times acceleration, or you don't need to know how to balance a chemistry equation. You don't need to know how to do these things. This is really just a data interpretation section. You just need to know how, if you've done an experiment and you've gotten these results, how to interpret results. And so one thing that you learn is that whatever crazy words they're throwing at you, whatever just nutty things that you're seeing, don't worry about them. If you don't know what they mean, don't worry about it. Literally all we need to do is interpret a graph or interpret a chart of results. And as long as you can do that, you are going to get all the questions right. And it's going to be awesome. So like let's take an example of this. I'm going to put something up on the screen. Again, looks a little crazy. Don't freak out. Might look a little nutty, but we'll go through it and you'll see how all these words and all these things that they're talking about aren't really that important. All that's really important is what direction these lines are going in over here in the chart. Okay, but let's go ahead and read it. It says solid materials were examined for their maximum solubility level in water at various temperatures. Figure 1 shows the grams of solute for various chemical compounds in a saturated solution with 100 grams of H2O solvent at temperatures between 0 degrees Celsius and 100 degrees Celsius. And they give us this little ratio. Solubility is the ratio of grams of solute to grams of solvent. All of this looks terribly hard and terribly complicated, but the thing that's really important to keep in mind here is just your two axes of your chart. In other words, we're taking temperature. We're just going to like change the temperature here from 0 all the way up to 100. And then we're just going to see how that affects the solubility. What does that mean? It just means how much solute we have. Because we're never going to change this bottom part, never going to change. That's always going to be 100 grams. So I wouldn't even worry about that part. We don't even have to worry about that. We just want to see, okay, this is how many grams of solute we have. And then we just said, well, this is kind of cool. As we increase the temperature here on the bottom, generally, solute goes up. We get more solute. And you can see for some of these, it's really crazy. Like, for example, let me make a thicker line here. For something like KNO3, I don't even know what that is. I have no idea what that is. If you know what that is, you are a smarter person than I am, because I don't know what that is. But what I see here in this chart is that, man, solute really goes up as temperature goes up. That's like a big positive relationship here. And like for most of these things, sugar, I know what sugar is. That's a little bit, that I know for sure. I eat it every day in large quantities. But we noticed, okay, the solubility for that really goes up a lot. There are a couple things here where it actually goes down, and that's kind of interesting. Ce2, whatever that is, goes down. Na2SO4 goes down. So for most things, it looks like it goes up. For a couple things, it goes down. And that is all we need to know. Masara says, what is the trend? That's exactly right. All we need to know is up or down. That's how easy it is. So let's look at a question just so I can prove it to you, so I can show you that it really is that easy. Let's look at this question right here. It says, approximately how many grams of NaNO3 could be dissolved in 25 grams of H2O at 90 degrees Celsius? And well, first, like, I don't know, maybe most of you, I have no idea what NaNO3 is. I don't know. What is that? Is that like nitrogen? I don't know. I don't care. But I just look over here on my chart and I say, here it is. NaNO3 is this line right here. And we're talking about 90 degrees. So I'm just going to look at my chart and I'm going to draw some lines here at 90 degrees. Let me try and draw these lines straight. Sometimes I draw them a little crooked and that messes everything up. But if, see, I told you that was going to happen. Let me try this again. Draw that kind of straight up there from 90 degrees. And the NaNO3 looks like that hits at that 160. Now you always want, so that seems pretty easy. It looks like at 90 degrees, the amount of solute, the grams of solute here is 160. But you always want to be careful. Take a little extra time, look back at your question, and notice this is 25 grams of H2O. Whereas in our chart, originally we had 100 grams of H2O. So everybody, this is the kind of my last question for y'all for today. And you're going to be genius scientists if you can just answer this question for me. Based on the fact that we originally had 100, and now we have 25, means what do we want to do to that 160? What do I need to do to that 160 Everybody tell me. I'm not gonna pick D. I might want to pick D. It looks tempting, but I'm not gonna do it. The fact that I went from 100 to 25, and think of what you have to do to 100 to get down to 25. What would you have to do to that 100 to get down to 25? That'll tell you what you have to do to this 160. Everybody tell me in the chat. Last question of the night. What are you gonna do to it? I'm seeing Ashla 30. I think that's probably Ashley right there saying, hey, what if we divide by 4? I'm seeing it's Lenaboo. Lenaboo. It's nice to meet you there. Lenaboo, it's nice to meet you. Divide by 4. That's right. Because we did 100 divided by 4 to get to 25. We're going to do 160 divided by 4. Watcha, watcha. To get to 40, and that is going to be answer choice B. Congratulations, y'all. You are now genius scientists. Notice I didn't really need to understand what a solute was. I didn't really need to know what this chemical, whatever the heck that was. I don't need to know these details. I just need to be able to read a chart and be able to answer it. I'm seeing 90% in the poll. Here is a big ninja throwing star for y'all for that one. So that is basically our class. That hopefully now you have an idea of how classes work here at Online Prep Live. Let me just tell you a little bit of the great things that you get if you sign up for our class, which I hope you all do, because I think we can help you out a lot. If you sign up, you get 2,400 ACT practice questions. That's a lot of questions. You don't need to do them all, but it's good to have that many there. So whatever you need to work on personally, you can work on it. You can get better at it. You get 2 full-length ACT practice tests and then 4 shorter ACT diagnostic tests. And believe me, this is a long test, so it's good to have these sort of short version tests that still give you a good idea what you're scoring, so you don't have to sit there for like the full 5 hours it takes to like take this test. You also get digital flashcards, which are really cool. You can use them on your phone. It's really helpful for getting better at this test. And most importantly, hopefully, you get these classes that you just had. So if you had fun today, if you enjoyed sitting and watching your computer working on ACT questions with me, I would love to see y'all in my classes. I'm on here all the time in front of the cameras with my off-screen teachers, helping you guys out, not only on content, but we also have great classes about things like goal setting, about managing anxiety, which I know is a big thing for a lot of people. We have classes on all of these things, and when you sign up, you just see the schedule of the classes, and you can go to them whenever you want. You just go, oh, I've got time for this session. I'm going to go and click on it and watch it, and it's really, really cool. We also have on-demand recorded lessons. So Mackenzie's asking, can I access this video whenever I need? If you sign up, yes. We have all of our classes pre-recorded for you with kind of other people chatting and stuff, and you can just go and you can just watch it. So if it's like, 7 o'clock in the morning for whatever reason you're up and you're like, I wanna watch an ACT video, well, you can do that, and you can watch, for example, like a session that we just did right now, and you can see the video of it. So that's really, really cool. It also gives you complete breakdowns of how you're doing, what things you need to work on, so that you can really like customize your experience. So if you are interested in this, and I hope you all are, because I think it can really, really help, there are 2 ways that you can sign up. One is when you sign up for the test itself, which if you haven't done this yet, you might want to look into this. You might want to do this soon. Sign up for the ACT. You will see an option that you can sign up for the Online Prep Live. You can either sign up for it without the class sessions. That's an option if you just want the materials. then you can sign up for just the materials. Hopefully, though, you want to do these lessons with me. You want to come back and spend a little bit more time with me and learn some more great ACT tips online, and you can sign up for that as well. If you've already signed up for the test and you're like, I missed my chance. No, you haven't missed your chance. You can come back and you can go ahead and purchase even if you've already signed up for the test. And here's the last thing I'm going to let you all know. The regular price for this, I don't know, that's really small. It might be hard to see it, but it's $179. Starting Friday, we're having a special deal. So if you go onto the website on Friday, the ACT website, we're going to take 25% off the price of the Online Prep Live package, and so that'll bring the price down to about $134. $134, you get all of the classes that you can attend whenever they are happening. You get recordings of all the classes that you can watch anytime. You get those 6 practice tests, you get all the practice questions, you get a lot of other materials that you can customize, really get the most out of your studying. And our big philosophy here is that we want to make studying easy, we want to make it fun, we want to make it as painless as possible, so y'all actually, I'm not going to say that you're always going to like studying, but hopefully it doesn't feel bad. Hopefully you're like a little jazzed up, a little excited to go into class and attack those ACT materials. So that is all I have for y'all today. You all were fantastic. I want to thank you very much for coming to this class, for checking us out. Like I said, go to the website on Friday. Pro tip: Friday is the day when that discount's going to be up there. So if you had fun, you want to do more of this, go on there Friday, sign up. $134. If you have any questions, we'll continue chatting with you over in the chat on the other side of the screen. My off-screen teachers and I will just hang out for a little bit. We'll have some fun. We'll answer any other questions that you have. Oh, Laura's asking, you only get it for a week. No, Laura, you get it for a full enrollment. And a full enrollment. Wait, off-screen teachers, remind me, what? How long is that full enrollment? It's months. It's months. So if you're taking the February test, we got you out through the February test. If you're taking the one after, we got you out through the one after. You'll have access all the way through. Greg is telling me 6 months. 6 months access for $134. It's really the best deal in prep. If you take an ACT class anywhere else, you will see it is much more expensive. But we really love the system, and we think it can really, really help you out. And we basically do it by having these online classes. That helps us keep our costs down, because a whole bunch of people can come in and participate in the classes. But at the same time, you can customize it to what you need. So that's why we can offer this at such a low price and for so long. Awesome. Looks like Zachary's fired up to keep studying some of that math. And Zachary, if you're interested, come check us out. Sign up for the ACT Online Prep Live. Like I said, wait till Friday, because that's when that discount will kick in. But if you do have any other questions, throw them over to my off-screen teachers. I'm going to take off, though. I want to thank you all again for attending. On behalf of me, my off-screen teachers, Greg, Laura, Katie, and Rob, we will hopefully see you all online very, very soon for more Online Prep Live. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next time.